Beyond Reason Radio.
Oh, there's a lot of Beyond Reason stuff to go over from this week. The news this week. Tom Benson is in the control room smiling because he knows it's true. There is a ton of Beyond Reason stuff to go over this week.
Absolutely. This was a perplexing week for me.
Really?
Yes.
Perplexing? Oh, Tom Benson's been perplexed. I have to hear why.
Well, because I was edging towards feeling sorry for Nancy Pelosi.
What?
Because she was being disrespected by certain people in her party.
Oh, man. You realize what the left has done to us lately, Tom Benson?
I know.
They have made us defend Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi within the past couple of weeks. Only the AOCs and the other radical leftists could make us do that.
I heard something this past week that the Democrats seem to have run out of Republicans to harass, and now they're shooting each other in the trenches.
All right. Well, I guess we'll just let him do it. You know, Trump's eating it up. That's for sure.
Oh, sure.
Definitely helps him. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason, the voice of truth in a world that is beyond reason. We're on till 9 p.m. tonight right here on News Radio 93.1 WFLA. Of course, it is available anywhere podcasts are available as well. So search for the Beyond Reason Radio podcast and give us a good rating, give us a good view, and share it. You can also like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page and catch the live video of us on there right now on the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. So, I've been thinking a lot about what's going on in the news this week. And the theme that came to my mind was the left seems to be creating arrogant victims. Now, that might seem like an oxymoron, but when you actually go through some of the news in the past week and hear what they have been saying, it seems like, yes, and a lot of them are younger. A lot of them are my age, millennials, or even younger, Generation Z. But the ones I've noticed this week are millennials. And somehow they're arrogant and they're victims at the same time. At first, I was like, I don't know how this is possible, but I started thinking about it more even tonight, and I'm going to explain why this is happening and where this comes from. But the best example of this, I think, is the Women's World Cup soccer team. Now, I would have never talked about soccer much before because I don't like to watch soccer. We're Americans. When you watch a football game or a basketball game, it is much more exciting than a soccer game. They only score like twice a game. And the rest of the time, they're just running back and forth on a field. It's slow. I can't. I mean, I understand that I could never play it because I don't have that much endurance. So maybe that's part of it. And I had crooked feet as a child. I was pigeon-toed. So I couldn't, ever play soccer even as a kid. So maybe there's some animus from my childhood or something. But I'm not a big fan of soccer. But I'm really not a big fan of hockey either. Hockey's a little bit more exciting than soccer. But hockey's the same problem. They only score once or twice a game. If you want to make hockey more exciting, get rid of the goalies. In fact, if you want to make soccer more exciting, get rid of the goalies. Then they will score more, and then it will be a much more exciting game. I digress. I'm talking about sports for a second on a show that's supposed to be about faith, culture, and politics. But the Women's World Cup soccer team, you pointed this out to me, Tom Benson, I agree. A lot of people, I think, are turned off by them because they come off, even before a lot of the political stuff. Mm-hmm. We'll get into the political stuff in a sec. But they come off as obnoxious. The one girl who used to play for the Orlando Pride, she did the whole tea sipping thing, totally mocking the British. And it just seemed like there was no sportsmanship. There was no humility. There was just all, look at me, I'm amazing. And, part of it is they are really good. They are amazing.
In football, if you mock your opponent, you get a penalty.
Yeah, that's true. And they say, oh, well, you're just saying that because you're sexist. And if it was a guy doing
That's true.
No. If it was a guy doing it, you wouldn't say that. No, I think there's a difference between celebrating and being into the game and being obnoxious. And there are certain things, especially this girl, Rapinoe. It's Megan Rapinoe, right? Rapinoe.
Yeah.
She's the purple-haired one. She's very talented.
Mm-hmm.
An amazing player. And she got into some political things where she didn't want to stand for the national anthem, and she really hates Trump. And we'll go into that in a second. She's also homosexual. But she comes off as, in one sense, a victim, because she talks about how this country, she talks about the equal pay thing. Women are not paid equally. Homosexuals have been oppressed. This country oppresses people like me and blacks and yada, yada, yada. She's a victim in one sense of society, of American society. But then she's also arrogant in that she is just thinks of herself as amazing. And here's an example of it. When she was at the victory parade, she was holding the statue, and a reporter came and asked her, about it. Here's the exchange.
What do you have to say? What do you deserve?
I deserve this.
You deserve all of it. Everything. You deserve this.
So, and you got to see the video. So that was Megan yelling, "I deserve this." What do you deserve? Everything. I deserve everything. You deserve everything? In one sense, she's right. She did deserve it because she won the game. But there's more to it than that, I think. I deserve it because I'm me. And it's like, there's no humility. There's no sportsmanship. It's not even about teamwork in that comment. It's just, I deserve this because I'm amazing. And it's like, it's just arrogant. It is. Where's the sportsmanship? So in one sense, that's what I'm saying. She's a victim, but she's also arrogant. And this is where this comes from. Where it comes from is people like her have been told for years from the left that she's a victim. Her whole life, from certain circles, because she's gay and she's a woman, you're a victim of American society. So now she's going to come up and she's getting all this glory. And of course she's saying, look how much I've accomplished despite my victimhood. That's what we're creating now. We told them they're all victims, and then we told them, but you shouldn't be a victim anymore. You stand up against the victimness. So it creates this arrogance where, like, I was such a victim, and now look at all I've accomplished, all because of me. I've overcome all my victimness. And people like me are like, how are you a victim? What? Because you're gay and a woman, you're a victim in the United States? Really? I don't really see any examples in her life of being a victim. She played soccer most of her life as a kid, went to decent schools, went to the Women's World Cup, is making tons of money, is getting tons of endorsement deals, getting tons of media attention and popularity. Where has she been a victim? Instead, people like me realize that what she should be is grateful. She should be grateful for her country and for her situation and for her teammates and for her upbringing, that in this country she was able to have an amazing opportunity to accomplish great things. Yes, in some sense you can be, you can have pride in your accomplishments, but you also need to show some humility in the fact that you were able to accomplish those things because you live in the greatest country in the world. Because, I know she'll never do that, because of your upbringing, because of your team, your teammates. But there's none of that. There's very little of her being grateful, because she can't be grateful if she's been taught for most of her life that she's a victim. So and she's one of many. AOC is another one of these people where she has been taught, because she's a minority and she's a woman, that somehow she's a victim. And when I say she's been taught, she'll say, no, I lived it. You haven't lived your victimness. You don't know what it's really like to be a victim. Come on. Because you live in a great country, you got a college degree, You were able to get elected to Congress very young. You are a statement to how great the opportunities this country can give you. And yes, you deserve it in one sense because you had to go out and get elected, but you still need to be grateful and humble in the fact that the situation helped you get there. And they can't do it. They can't. Because if they do that, then they can't say they're a victim anymore. They have to admit that maybe they're blessed. Wow, what a statement. Maybe, how nice would it be if they came out and said, I am so blessed to be in this country. And they can't do it. They can't do it. So we're going to talk more about this in a minute. I want to play some more of Megan Rapinoe talking about Trump and all this stuff and her victimhood in this country. And I'll tell you why it's beyond reason. We'll get to that and more AOC stuff. Of course, she got in a spat with Nancy Pelosi. The arrogant victims on this show today. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Yes, welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right or wrong. The conscience of the radio waves. I appreciate you all listening to the show tonight. If you want to contribute to the show, you can text to 23680. We're also on Facebook Live as well. You can also follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at PMOWFLA. I call it that because I host another show Monday through Friday, PM Orlando, that is more about local and national breaking news. But we're going to go in depth because I've been talking about arrogant victims, how the left seems to create arrogant victims. And one example, of course, is Megan Rapinoe of the U.S. Women's World Cup soccer team. And they're a great team. They're amazing athletes. But the arrogance comes from the fact that they can't seem to be grateful for their situation. They just think they deserve it because. And then they're victims because they say they're victims of society. So she got a lot of attention recently because she did an interview with Anderson Cooper and talking about President Trump, of course, because before she said she wouldn't visit the White House. And Trump was actually really nice about it. She said, I'm going to invite them win or lose. And she was sorry that Megan was saying all this stuff. And Trump congratulated them when they won. So it's kind of amazing how Trump looks like the magnanimous one there. But she was on Anderson Cooper and she was asked, if you have what message would you give Trump if you had a chance, if he's listening? Here's what she said.
I think that I would say that your message is excluding people. You're excluding me. You're excluding people that look like me. You're excluding people of color. You're excluding, Americans that maybe support you. I think that we need to have a reckoning with the message that you have and what you're saying about Make America Great Again. I think that you're harking back to an era that was not great for everyone. It might have been great for a few people, and maybe America is great for a few people right now, but it's not great for enough Americans in this world. And I think that we have a responsibility, each and every one of us. You have an incredible responsibility as, the chief of this country, to take care of every single person, and you need to do better for everyone.
Well, actually, you have a responsibility as president to protect the rights of every single person so they can take care of themselves. But that's neither here or there. What does she say there? This is a really big pet peeve of mine from a lot of people who don't like Trump, because they're twisting Trump's message. Make America great again. Well, what he means by that is he wants to go back to Jim Crow and wants to go back to arresting gays.
Back to the 50s.
And it was, back then it wasn't great for everyone. Well, it was still great for the majority of people, but they're right, it wasn't great for everyone. But come on, you're just not being honest. You're twisting his message. Every time President Trump talks about Make America Great Again, what are the things he talks about? He talks about the economy, mostly trade deals at a time where an American industry seemed more dominant in the world and wants better trade deals. I disagree with Trump a lot on trade, but his message has always been about the economy and trade and the military and not being pushed around by the rest of the world. Every time he gives the message of Make America Great Again, it's usually the economy and the military and foreign policy, not being pushed around by the rest of the world. It's not about, when does he ever say anything like, oh, he wants to bring back Jim Crow? And he's probably the most LGBTQ supportive president we've ever had in the Republican Party. And they're still claiming that they're somehow victims. And we need to have a reckoning about the message, Make America Great Again. This is a fear of theirs they're projecting onto something that doesn't exist. It's not there. But they don't know any better because they don't know how not to be victims. Their whole identity is being an arrogant victim, like I said. Being a victim, and then their accomplishments seem that much better because they've overcome the victimhood that really wasn't there. And they can't move past that. And it's amazing. And then she said something pretty interesting. There's still enough of us who are oppressed by America, or whatever she said there. There's still enough of us where the country is not great for them. Well, for one, no country is going to fulfill that goal. Okay? Yes, you can aspire to be better all the time, but the vast majority of Americans have it much better in this country than most people in the history of the world. And all I want you to do is acknowledge that. And she'll say, yeah, that doesn't mean we haven't been good in the past. And she acknowledges it a little bit, but she's constantly focusing on the victimhood when there are very few real victims in this country. So a lot of this brings me then to the whole spat between AOC and Nancy Pelosi. And I don't know, what cut do I have next up there? I have AOC next.
Yeah, AOC won.
Okay, first, I want to play that, but all of this started when AOC said of Nancy Pelosi that she was somehow singling out the members of Congress, the women of color, those of color in Congress, kind of implying that Nancy Pelosi is racist or whatever, a little bit there. Why would she single out people of color? Why would she do this? And then AOC was asked about this later by a CNN reporter, and this was her response.
It's singling out 4 individuals. And knowing the media environment that we're operating in, knowing the amount of death threats that we get, knowing the amount of concentration of attention, I think it's just worth asking why.
Do you think she has racial animus? Is she racist?
No, absolutely
no.
not.
See, AOC, I give her credit because she gets me talking about her and gets so many people talking about her. She's like Trump in that way, I'm telling you. She is so good at keeping attention on herself. She's not the smartest person ever, not a deep thinker, I don't think, but she's clever. She's pretty clever. She knows when she says stuff like that she knows what it does.
It's going to rattle somebody's chain.
It's going to rattle chains. It's going to imply things, and then she'll back out of it later. She's very clever in that way. But notice what she does there. She once again plays the victim. They just can't help it. So many on the radical left, and especially the young ones on the radical left, they don't know how not to play the victim. Their identity is based on their victimhood. And if you take away their victimhood, they lose a big part of their identity. So it is always going to be an immediate reaction of her to play the victim. Every time. And Nancy Pelosi, it's funny, Nancy Pelosi kind of responded to this. I believe I have that cut. Do I have the Pelosi cut up there? Go ahead and play that next.
I've said what I'm going to say in the caucus. That's where this is appropriate. And I said what I'm going to say in the caucus. They took offense because I addressed, at the request of my members, an offensive tweet that came out of one of the members' offices that referenced our Blue Dogs and our New Dems essentially as segregationists. Our members took offense at that. I addressed that. How they're interpreting and carrying it to another place is up to them. But I'm not going to be discussing it any further. I said what I'm going to say. With all due respect, maybe you didn't hear what I said. I said what I'm going to say on the subject. What I said in the caucus yesterday got an overwhelming response from my members because they know what the facts are and what we're responding to. We respect the value of every member of our caucus. The diversity of it all is a wonderful thing. Diversity is our strength. Unity is our power. And we have a big fight, and we're in the arena. And that's all I'm going to say on the subject. So if you want to waste your question, you can waste your question.
All I have to say, Pelosi, is when you live by identity politics, you die by identity politics. Identity politics is starting to eat their own because they've created this narrative. Nancy Pelosi did too. There's quotes of her basically calling Mitch McConnell a racist because he didn't support everything Obama did. Oh, that's racist, she basically said in the past. So when you've created that world, how do you not expect it to eventually eat you, bite you back? That's what's happening here. You've created a world when you criticize certain people, their immediate reflex is going to be that you're racist and they're being criticized because of their race. That's all they know. That is their immediate reaction. This is why identity politics is dangerous. This is why, Nancy Pelosi just didn't expect it to happen to her as a Democrat. Oh, that's only supposed to happen to Republicans. But now you think they would understand it. This is why identity politics is terrible, because not every criticism of someone is because of their race or their gender or their sexuality. Sometimes the criticism of them is actually their ideas and what they're actually doing and saying. But someone like AOC, they can't understand that. They've been told their whole lives that every criticism of you is because you're a victim and they're racist. So, of course, AOC probably doesn't even realize she's doing it. It's just a reflex. Dan Crenshaw had a really good comment on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Republican Representative Dan Crenshaw. He said, "Madam Speaker, welcome to the true nature of identity politics, where you're accused of being racist for no reason at all, and where intellectually lazy insults are used against you as a way to replace substantive debate of your argument or idea." He's right. And this is what they do. And Nancy Pelosi deserves it just as much as anyone else. Now, it really is a beyond reason world, though, when President Trump comes out and defends Nancy Pelosi. And I have that cut. Is that cut up there, Tom Benson? Do you see the Trump cut? Go ahead and play that cut next, where Trump is actually defending Pelosi against AOC. Here it is.
Well, I think Cortez, who kept Amazon out of New York, and they don't like her for that, thousands and thousands of jobs. I think Cortez is being very disrespectful to somebody that's been there a long time. I deal with Nancy Pelosi a lot, and we go back and forth, and it's fine. But I think that a group of people is being very disrespectful to her. And you know what? I don't think that Nancy can let that go on. A group of people that came from, I don't know where they came from. I'm looking at this Omar from Minnesota. And if one half of the things they're saying about her are true, she shouldn't even be in office. But Cortez should treat Nancy Pelosi with respect. She should not be doing what she's doing. And I'll tell you something about Nancy Pelosi that you know better than I do. She is not a racist, okay? She is not a racist. For them to call her a racist is a disgrace.
This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. More to come. We'll be right back.
If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Yes, this is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio, Beyond Reason Radio. If you miss any of the show, by the way, make sure to check the podcast of the show anywhere podcasts are available. By the way, there's other stuff that I put on the podcast stream as well. So I filled in for Good Morning Orlando earlier this week. That's up on the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. I also did an interview with a guy by the name of Myron Magnet. He has a new book out called Clarence Thomas and the Lost Constitution. I did an interview with him, and that is up on the Beyond Reason Radio podcast page. So if you just, on iTunes or anywhere podcasts are available, search for Beyond Reason Radio with Michael Yaffee. You'll find it, and it is up there. So I want to get into something a little bit differently, because in the last couple of segments, we were talking about how everyone plays the victim. And the one thing that is always thrown around, we know this as conservatives, now I guess the Democrats are kind of figuring it out, but we know as conservatives that they always throw around the racist card, that everything is considered racist. Well, one person who's being called a racist by everyone on the left this week is Tucker Carlson. Does a show on Fox News. He did a monologue recently on his show talking about Ilhan Omar, the Muslim congresswoman. Mm-hmm. And immediately everyone on the left said, this is racist and all of this stuff. And Ilhan Omar even responded to it saying, I think just called him said, not going to lie, it's kind of fun watching a racist fool like this weeping about my presence in Congress. So Ilhan Omar says, he's a racist fool. So I'm going to play for you a lot of this monologue, especially the part they're saying is racist. And then I want you to tell me what part of this is racist, because I can't find what's racist. And I don't know if I actually agree with everything Tucker is saying, but there are ways to legitimately disagree with him. I'm sure a lot of libertarians don't agree with everything he's saying here. But the point is, which part of this is racist? Here it is.
Omar is now, at the age of only 36, one of the most powerful women in America. It's an amazing story, really. Only in this country could it have happened. Ilhan Omar has an awful lot to be grateful for. But she isn't grateful. Not at all. After everything America has done for Omar and for her family, she hates this country more than ever. In a recent piece in the Washington Post, the reporter put it this way, quote, in Omar's version, America isn't the big-hearted country that saved her from a brutal war and a bleak refugee camp. It wasn't a meritocracy that helped her attend college or vaulted her into Congress. Instead, it was the country that had failed to live up to its founding ideals, a place that had disappointed her and so many immigrants, refugees, and minorities like her, end quote. If anything, that's an understatement. Omar isn't disappointed in America. She's enraged by it. Virtually every public statement she makes accuses Americans of bigotry and racism. This is an immoral country, she says. She has undisguised contempt for the United States and for its people. That should worry you, and not just because Omar is now a sitting member of Congress. Ilhan Omar is living proof that the way we practice immigration has become dangerous to this country. A system designed to strengthen America is instead undermining it. Some of the very people we try hardest to help have come to hate us passionately. Maybe that's our fault for asking too little of our immigrants. We aren't self-confident enough to make them assimilate so they never feel fully American. Or maybe the problem is deeper than that. Maybe we're importing people from places whose values are simply antithetical to ours. Who knows what the problem is? But there is a problem. And whatever the cause, this cannot continue. It's not sustainable.
Tom Benson.
Yes, sir.
Were you were just listening to that? Because you had to play it. Tell me which part is racist.
Well, I think it was in the beginning and the end and everything in between. No, actually, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
She's not grateful.
So the point that he's making there is...
I read the same article that he was talking about in the Washington Post.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, and the impression I got from the article is that she expected everything to be handed to her when she got here in America. And when she found out it wasn't going to be that way, that's when she got disillusioned.
Well, not only that, but I'm sure she was taught by people on the left and others that she's a victim because she's a minority and because she's a Muslim, and that comes ingrained in her mind. Well, then I must be a victim, and anything I accomplish is in spite of my victimhood. But what part of... He talks about, okay, she came as a refugee, basically, should be grateful for this country that accepted her.
Sure.
She doesn't seem to be grateful, seems to hate this country. Now, some on the left might disagree with that. Fine, we could debate that issue, if she's grateful, if she loves the country or not. But then he makes the point, maybe the problem is we're importing people from places that have antithetical values to this country. So we import people in our immigration system. We either don't focus on assimilation enough, or we take them from cultures that are so different to this country that, of course, are going to hate this country because the culture doesn't match with our culture.
It's adverse to everything
adverse
they
for
know.
Our culture.
Sure.
In no part of that did he mention her race. No part of that did he mention her skin color or any kind, other than saying that she was from Somalia, I guess. But she didn't say she's a woman of color or anything like that. Didn't mention her race. He did mention her culture. And this is what bothers me about this conversation so much, is we can't have an honest conversation about culture anymore. That there are different cultures in the world, and some cultures have different values than American culture. And that's not race. Culture and race are not the same thing. Mm-hmm. Race is your genetics. Race has historically been understood of your genetics. You have no control over your genetics, your skin color, whatever that is, anything like that. That's not what he's talking about. He's saying that she came from a country where their value system is different, and she was taught in a different value system, in a different culture, and that doesn't blend with this culture. And a lot of immigrants are taught in a different culture, and that doesn't blend with this culture. That's not racism. Racism back in the day was saying blacks were literally genetically inferior. Tucker's not saying that. He's not saying she's genetically inferior or genetically different, and therefore we can't accept immigrants from there because they're genetically different. He didn't even say that. But the left is so... They can't have an honest conversation about this because they can't give up their victimhood, but they're so dumb and they're not deep thinkers that you can't have conversations like this. Wait, there's a difference between culture and race? Yes. Now, you could disagree with his thesis. His thesis might be... it might be that most Somali immigrants actually do assimilate pretty well. I don't know. I'd have to look at the stats. And he even admits he doesn't really know. He's just kind of throwing out ideas. Mm-hmm. I'd have to look at the stats. But just because you disagree with that doesn't mean he is a racist, because that's not racism. And we can't do that. Anytime you bring up that other cultures are different, we can't have an honest conversation because you're immediately branded as a racist. And it's not racism.
When you call somebody racist in this instant, it's because I think they want to deflect the criticism off themselves and put it back on the accuser.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's always what they do. That's what the left does. It's like I said earlier, it's a reflex. But I guess it just drives me crazy because we are blurring. Words have meaning. Words mean things. When you say race, it means something different than culture. Mm-hmm. So maybe he's a culturalist or whatever. But if you deny that cultures are different and culture systems have different values and sometimes they can clash, if you deny that, you're just stupid. I mean, no anthropologist will tell you any differently. So it just bothers me because I pointed that out on Twitter and people were saying, what are you talking about? That was the most racist thing he ever said. But he didn't mention race at all. It doesn't matter. They either don't understand the difference, which they don't, or they're reading something into it that isn't there. That he must really have meant her race because he's conservative. That must have been what he meant. Well, I can't go into his heart and his mind and tell you what he meant there. All I can do is debate you on what he said. And nothing he said is racist. I want to talk more about this immigration stuff, the detention at the border. We'll get to that next. The immigration raids coming up as well. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, joined by Tom Benson producing as well. We're on until 9 p.m. tonight right here on News Radio 93.1 WFLA. Of course, if you have missed any of the show, though, catch the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at PMOWFLA. So I have to get into this whole debate once again about what's going on at the border and the detention centers, because there was a hearing in Congress today where some members of Congress were once again complaining about the detention centers, including AOC and Rashida Tlaib. Here's a little bit of what they had to say today.
This is a manufactured crisis because the cruelty is manufactured. This is a manufactured crisis because there is no need for us to do this. There's no need for us to overcrowd and to detain and under-resource. There is no need for us to arrest innocent people and treat them no differently than criminals when they are pursuing their basic human rights.
The fear in their eyes won't be forgotten, Mr. Speaker, but the suffering in these illegal camps cannot be forgotten. Imagine traveling thousands of miles in grueling and dangerous conditions because you have no other option only to be separated from your family, from your children, thrown into overcrowded cages, denied a shower, toothbrush, and yes, Mr. Chairman, drink water out of the toilet if you're thirsty.
So, by the way, it's pretty amazing when they talk about the terrible conditions. There was a border agent who actually put out a video earlier this week where he literally walks through the detention center and shows they can get water here, they can get water here. We have these little toothbrushes, we have these foods, yada, yada, yada. We do the best we can. Yes, there's overcrowding. I mean, it's just, you can't take them seriously because instead of saying, we have a problem here, we need to make these centers better, which needs more funding and more resources.
Which you voted against.
Yeah, because listen to what she was saying there. It's their basic human rights. They had no other options. Yes, they did. The other option was not to come here. And put them in cages. You mean the Obama cages? I mean, I just wanted to point that out because Obama put them first. But to say even Obama told them, don't bring your kids here. So if Obama was there saying that today, I guess Rashida Tlaib would say, but they have no other options. You can't have a sovereign country with open borders. And they're saying we're not for open borders. I don't know how you compromise with this. I said this earlier this week. I'm saying it. How do you compromise with this? Because they're basically saying that by preventing people from entering the country illegally, we are denying them their human rights. That means everyone in the world, I guess, has a human right to come here and to live in this country. What nation on earth practices that? None. No nation on earth has it as their policy that anyone can come and live here. No nation that I know of, anyway. These nations in Europe don't do that, where you can go and just live there. It's my human right to go there. No, it's not. No, there is no such thing as a human right to go and break into a sovereign country and live there because you want to. If we're going to have a sovereign country, so I say again, I don't know how we compromise, because their position is, as you heard there, these immigrants have no other choice, and it is their human right to come here, to claim asylum, and to basically live here. I can't compromise with that. How do you take that seriously? But once again, it's because, they're victims. But they do have another choice. Their other choice is not to come here. Most are coming for economic reasons. I understand why they want to come here, but you don't have to. We have been telling people for years now, do not come here unless you have a legitimate claim of asylum or unless you are coming legally. Otherwise, you can't come here. I don't think that's too unreasonable. And Thomas Homan, who used to be the acting ICE director, was at this hearing as well, and AOC was asking him questions, and he actually gave real answers. Here it is.
And so the recommendation of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father
Mr.
from his
Holman,
family.
with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum and go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Okay.
So when you're talking to AOC right there, she is saying all of these, basically saying, well, they're not doing anything illegal. This goes back to Julian Castro. They want to decriminalize illegal immigration in this country. Well, they're seeking asylum. And he's saying, well, there's a legal process to seek asylum. And they're not going through the legal process to seek it. And by the way, if they do go to the port of entry and say they're claiming asylum, they can still be detained until they see a judge, because if there's probable cause that they are not actually seeking asylum. But she's basically, how do you compromise when they say they're not open borders? There are, I think they did a poll. There's 5 million people from Central America who want to come here. Should we just let them all in? And I don't see AOC and Rashida Tlaib and others inviting them into their home. It's the same concept. I don't see why it's unreasonable to say you just can't come here illegally. But their basic position, obviously, is open borders. Is it not? What they're talking about is not enforcing immigration. So when it comes to these ICE immigration raids, and you say, well, these are immigrants who have been under deportation orders, we're going to go and deport them then. They're saying you can't do that. You're invading their human rights. Invading their human rights? They had their right of due process. They went through their due process rights. The court said, no, sorry, you have to leave. And that's what they're doing. But according to Rashida Tlaib and according to AOC, they have just as much of a right to stay in this country as you do as a citizen. I couldn't believe watching the Democrats bend over backwards to help illegal immigrants in this country, because to them, they blur the line between illegal immigrants and everyone else, and everyone has a right to stay here because that's just the way it is. You can't have a sovereign country that way. You just can't do it. Just can't do it. All right, I appreciate you listening to the show today. We'll do this again sometime. If you miss any of the show, check the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available. And, well, I'll catch you guys next time.